Hello, I'm Steph from idriveaclassic, and today we're back on the MGC and we're working on gearbox mountings. Now, the funny thing is we were going to pay for delivery, and then I got wind that Chris from MGOC Spares was in the area because he was visiting somebody else. And I said, you wouldn't mind just dropping them in, would you? And he said, don't let people think that that's a normal level of service. But anyway, he's dropped them in for us today. And then I said, while you're here, will you hold the camera just so we can do this intro? So we're taking the mickey full force today. But how long do you think this is going to take, Kev?
Probably no more than 3/4 of an hour, I would have thought.
Okay.
We'll be here at tea time, won't we? you could tell that's going to happen.
There's going to be something that we're going to unpick. So walk us through the entire process that we're going to do today.
Right, well, these are the new mountings, and they are proper MGC mountings that have been remanufactured from the MGOC Spares.
They actually look slightly different, don't they? Because a lot of people were talking to you and they were saying, are they the same as the MGB ones? But as you can see on the camera there, it does look slightly different. It's one of those things that you may not see unless you're up close and personal with the parts. So if you are doing this, make sure you order the right ones. But anyway,
it's all right. Yeah, so basically they are better rubber, more reinforced, and there's also the stop there for the extra torque of the engine. When you're braking, the engine is going to move forward in the gearbox, and that is just another anti-twist thing. Also, that is off to one side. So the car, when we put the engine and gearbox in, I used MGB gearbox mountings. So we're going to put the correct ones in today. So what we're going to do is, my glamorous assistant here, we're going to jack the gearbox up using a trolley jack and a block of wood, undo the cradle, take the cradle off, take it off the gearbox, replace it with these, put it back, simples.
We hope. Right.
Yeah, we hope.
Let's get going.
Okay. Right, well, here we go. Trolley jack, a bit of oak fence post left over from a job. So we've just got to support the gearbox to start with before we lose this cradle. Don't want to put too much tension on it because I don't want to knock it off the axle stand. Right, that's that there. Right, okay, let me get my tools.
What are you doing there, Kev?
Undoing the cradle. The cradle's coming off. Now, fortunately, I can use an impact gun on this, but it should come off okay because we replaced it when we did the engine and gearbox, and I also made sure that I put copper slip on the bolts so it came off again. I'm just going to have to go in with the smaller sockets, and also the front section of this, because it's quite difficult to do. A little tip I learnt years and years ago, probably 30 odd years ago, is the screw. If you cut a slot in the screw, you can actually go in with a screwdriver to get it started. Because if you can't, you can spend hours and hours and hours doing this job. As anybody with an MG trying to do this job will tell you, because everything's sort of backwards. And it's close to the side where you're trying to work is the bolt itself. So I think what I might do is just lower that down a little bit. Excuse me. At least we should be able to get a little bit more closer to it. There you go. That's going down nicely. That's as far as that'll go because it's actually into the the gear overdrive is actually onto the cross member. Now I'm going to have to get a little spanner onto that.
Right, I've finally been allowed to help under here, and I've got a tool in my hair, I've got a tool in my hand, and I'm not having much luck. Although Kev did say to me, he was very dismissive, and he did say, well, you won't be able to get it off, but I am trying. It's quite fiddly. Using 1/2-inch spanner, by the way, for anybody that's interested at home.
I decided to use the easy one.
Have you done the easy bolt?
Yep. Your management, I'm not. But, as I said before, I'm
Yeah.
going in with my screwdriver.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try and... no, I've got the slot in that
I
one.
feel like you're going to slip and that's going to go through my eye.
No, it's fine.
We're having trouble getting to this bolt, the one that I was faffing around with. So what we're doing now is we're using a screwdriver to slightly twist this section here. And apparently this screwdriver isn't good enough. So we're upgrading to the big daddy of all screwdrivers.
Yeah, Uncle Jeffrey's old screwdriver.
And we're going to...
You just need to pull that away.
Yeah. God, I'm really nervous.
Don't be nervous.
There we go, right.
There. And then I'm going to go in with the bolt there.
Yeah.
With the smaller socket set.
So if you're wondering, by the way, at home, how much I've twisted it, I reckon it's probably in the region of about 10 millimetres, kind of that half an inch. But it's just enough space for Kev to be able to get in.
There you go.
And he's done it. There we go.
Yeah, done that. But bear in mind, I put this cross member on with these mountings when it was on the deck in the first place, before we put the engine and gearbox in.
And we only did that a couple of months ago, so it's
So
relatively fresh.
Right, so we need to do that on that other side.
Okay, do you want me to get there? Can you get
I
in there?
might be able to get in there with a bit of... Yeah, I can.
Right. I'm going to move and we'll let Kev crack on.
Pro tip I learnt in 1988, having struggled for a gearbox for, it seemed like years and years and years. So what you do, the bolts, where you can't get to them, you put a slot in it with the trusty hacksaw. Doesn't have to be particularly deep. Believe me, if you do this, you'll thank me for this later on. Now that enables you to get a screwdriver head in to get it started. And once it's started, you can make the thing work, but because of how it is, you've got to bend it round to fit the mountings on. So there you go, that's your pro tip.
Now, while Kev's busy over there on the workbench, I thought I'd make myself useful and take off the old mountings. It's very, very easy. I think I've just got a 1/2 inch spanner on these. What have I got? Is it yeah, 1/2 inch spanner. And I'm just taking those off. Now, what I'm doing is I'm just putting the formation just back on for now, just for my own reference. So I'll just get this one off as well. These little bits, I think, just help build that confidence and make you feel at one with the car. It just makes you feel like you're making a little bit of a contribution. Because I feel like we've been doing so many bits and pieces lately that are quite technical and quite skilled that I've not really been able to contribute that much. And that's made me feel a bit kind of distant from the project. So those are off. As you can see here, we've got the cradle and we're going to rebuild all of this back up. But it's a nice, easy job. And we've got, I'm terrible, look. Need to grab those. Now it is worth saying that when you do reassemble, there's two things that we need to discuss. So first of all, you've got your copper slip, which, I mean, when did they last update that branding? That can is so retro. So we've got those just here, and we've just put a little bit, you'll be able to see at home there, a little bit of copper slip on there. However, that's not the only thing, because quite often people will talk about the longevity of rubber, and you hear about this all the time. And I was talking to Chris about it actually, and he said to me, he said, well, if you think about it like this, and when I thought about it, I thought, actually, that is such a good way to think about it. When you've got your modern car, all the rubber is kind of hidden away and it doesn't get that same exposure to the elements that your rubbers and your classics do. So one of the things that you should use is red rubber grease, because what happens is it just helps keep that rubber supple, it stops it from cracking out and drying. And we were talking about rubber, and this is probably a really interesting thing to talk about actually, because I've been seeing it a lot on car forums lately and car groups, is that people moan that rubber is perishing at an alarming rate. And we were saying that rubber is one of those materials that when it's used regularly and it's moving about and stuff and it's kept supple, the longevity of of its time on the car is much longer. Well, the time it's on the car is much longer because it is in regular movement. And a good example, and I compared it to, is that like old elastic on vintage clothing, when it's not used, it's just stored away. It tends to break down and it tends to perish much quicker than garments that are in regular use. And it's the same for the rubber on your car. So make sure when you are doing this that you are using a bit of red rubber grease. Typical bullet in a china shop, I just started reassembling this and I kind of guessed how it went back together, and I'll show you how I guessed, and the way to do it was I just followed the natural contour on there and I thought, well, that mirrors it, so that must be how it goes. And then Kev comes charging across the workshop and goes, hey, before you put that all back together, are you sure it's right? And I thought, no, of course I'm not sure it's right. And he said, look at the parts catalogue because it's got a really good exploded diagram inside. So it's not a replacement for your usual Haynes manual, and we love a Haynes manual here, but you can see that the exploded diagram there shows us that we have got it just the right way up. So if you are the same as us and you get your bits from MGOC Spares, when you place your order, just ask them to chuck one of those in. So don't they charge you for that?
I don't think so, those wouldn't be here.
Yeah, I was going to say, why am I chatting to this Yorkshire man? He's not paid for that. But they're really
It is very useful though, seriously. In all fairness, it's very useful.
And to be fair, I saw you using that book a few days ago, because when you're working on something like this and you've got something that's in bits or you think that something's missing, those exploded diagrams are great because you can not only work out if everything's there, but if something's missing, you've also got the parts number, so it's quite handy. Right, just going to chuck this back together. It is worth saying that we only do it finger tight. We don't tighten it all down on the bench, and that's because that gives us the opportunity then to adjust it once it's under the car. Although I've got strong conviction in my skills here, and I'm hoping that it's all bang on, but we'll see once we get back under there, eh?
Yeah. This a blooming awkward shape is this. I don't know who on earth designed this, but it's not very good, to say the least. Right, that's the easy ones in. Or just started. Because you've got to somehow pull that back and push it in.
Kev, Rostival, the next one is going to be happening on Saturday, 28th of September. For anybody who's missed that news, by the way, I'll pop it in the comments section below, a little link to the Rostival website. Are you going to have this ready for Rostival?
I sincerely hope so.
I hope you will as well.
I'll put it this way, I'll be disappointed if it isn't ready for then. But obviously life has a habit of slowing you down with things, various bits and pieces and things that you have to do, etc. But no, I mean once I get the body sorted out, it should be plain sailing, really, to be honest.
Do you reckon, not to add to your stress, that you could potentially help me get the Triumph running again?
Well, I'd like to think I could. Well, it was running when it was parked up, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it had a weird misfire. I don't know what.
Right.
I don't know. I just lost steam with it, really. We were talking about that earlier, weren't we? Because you've had this project now for a year, haven't you?
Yes, I have. That's very true.
And I mean, some people would say you go slowly, but then other people have projects sat in their garage for 10, 20, even 30 years before they get going. So.
Yeah, well, it won't be that long because I don't know if I'll live that long, to be honest. But no, I do want to get it done. I do want to get some enjoyment out of the car. But I mean, the thing is, you can't rush a project. If you're doing a project right, it does take a while.
Yeah.
But the net results are worth waiting for, I always say. So we're going to wait for it, and it's going to be as long as it takes, and that's it.
Now, it's not too often that you get one of the main men from the part supply that you use, pop down to your garage. It's almost intimidating because you think, oh, there's a lot of mess around, and you think, I bet Chris is always looking around posh garages and workshops. The MGOC workshop, by the way, is amazing. If you've never been, you should definitely go. I've been around a few times. But it's not just a case of where you are, you're selling parts and all the rest of it, because you do development as well, don't you?
We certainly do, Steph, yeah. And I would say in terms of workshops, I've been to every sort of workshop, and the thing that always amazes me with classic car owners is the quality of their production. It doesn't matter what's on the workbench, how much mess is in the way, how many bicycles there might be. You always see such a high standard, so I'd never be too worried about this workshop, and Kevin's got a particularly good one with lots of great old signs about.
Yeah, there are some good bits.
But in terms of development, that is something that MGOC Spares does spend an awful lot of time doing, and we're dedicated in respect of bringing back old obsolete parts, as well as innovating and really looking at the older parts and working out what's been deleted and maybe what should be brought back in. Like, for instance, something that we've been doing recently is developing a new range of petrol tanks.
Oh, yeah.
So shortly we'll have a petrol tank for all the MGBs, Midgets and so on that we have an offer for, which will incorporate a drain.
Oh,
so
nice.
That will certainly help owners that have been suffering with problems with fuel separation, where there's higher ethanol content now in the fuel. So when it comes to winterising their car, they'll be able to collect the remaining fuel and dispose of it responsibly. And that will give them a bit more longevity on the petrol tank, because what you tend to find is when you store a vehicle with any fuel in it, it doesn't matter whether you keep it in a warm, dry garage or a cold one. You'll find that through ambient temperatures, just climatic conditions, you'll find that the tank will sweat and you'll get condensate on the top panel of the petrol tank, and that condensate will form rust, and then that rust will drop into the bottom of the tank, and the first victim in that system is going to be your fuel pump. So that's certainly something that can be improved. So we're introducing a drain. So that will be coming out in the next few weeks. Other things that we've been doing on the MGB is we're working on some new products, like new glazing, and we've got bumpers coming in shortly, so we'll have an answer for people that have been struggling with chrome bumpers on these cars. We've gone to a lot of trouble to get them jigged correctly so that they fit properly on the rear. So we are putting in a lot of time and investment. You can't run, you have to walk. It's, you know, although we're very well invested in the business, it's a fairly small team. There's only just over 40 of us working there, and about 5 or so people involved on the buying front, and they're absolutely dedicated to making sure that the product's right and we can stand by it.
Of all the things that you've faced, because when you go to remanufacture parts or you try and create something which has been deleted, there are challenges. What do you reckon, for all the people that are watching at home that are wondering about all the work that you put in, what's the biggest challenge you've faced in the last 12 months?
Well, I've been up and down the country working with UK manufacturers and specialists on certain projects and bringing back old tooling into use, and especially complicated, complex assemblies where there might be 30 or 40 parts in it. You know, it's a big bill of materials, and to get them all together so that you can then have a works order created to produce a completed product that the customer needs for their car, that's been certainly a challenge, and that's taken up a lot of my time in recent months.
Well, you're doing a brilliant job, and I think that we've talked before on the videos. In fact, it's funny you mentioned the petrol tank, because for those of you that watched the Triumph 1500 video, you'll know that Kev had no end of trouble getting that petrol tank washed out, because it was full of crud essentially, because it had been sitting for years. So it's not only you're recreating stuff, but you're improving on what the original manufacturer spec was.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, when you look at what we tend to offer, we offer a standard part, but then alongside that we will offer usually an improved part alongside. For instance, if you look at our suspension for the MGB, one of the more popular items is the parabolic spring kit that we offer. And a parabolic tapered spring will give you a better ride over the rutted roads, and we all know that we have some terrible roads here in the UK, unfortunately. many potholes to navigate around. So the parabolic spring is very good at recovering its position very quickly. You do have to match them with a set of telescopic dampers, but they will give you improved comfort and a better driving experience in the car. So that's an example of a product alongside the original type spring that we also have produced for us, and we do a very good quality conventional interleafing spring with proper closing shackles and insulators, metallastic bushes that fit. So we do a full range of leaf springs for the MGB to standard specifications and the MGA, MGC, Midget and so on, but alongside that we also offer for the MGB parabolic springs.
Well, I think that they're doing a cracking job. And you know what? I just wanted to insert this in because A, Chris is here, so there's never a better time to ask him. But also because we talk about things like the engineering industry in Britain being dead, that we don't create anything, that we don't achieve excellence. And I hear this all the time, and it's becoming a bit of a trope. So actually, this is really great. Oh, I think we've got a workshop visitor. Ralph! The magic of filming, eh? But I just wanted to put it in because I think that people get doom and gloom about the British automotive industry, and actually there are people milling away that perhaps you don't hear about at home that are doing brilliant stuff that you can put onto your MG across the world. Well, I say that, do you ship across the world?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we ship worldwide.
Then.
Yeah, and you're right. You know, a lot of automotive manufacturers still being undertaken in the UK. I mean, for instance, on this MGC, the horn push on that, no one had made the proper horn push, the connections and the slip ring. No one had made that for years. So we have that made by an older gentleman, and he machines the whole thing out of brass, and then he makes the individual connectors and everything on the kit is just sublime. It takes him a lot of time, and you know they're 3 figures. But on the other hand, you know, these are the parts that really help complete a build, and you don't always want to rely on second hand.
No, and I think that's the thing, is that next time you go on Facebook or wherever you are, or down the local pub or at a car meet, and somebody has been really negative about the British car industry and saying, oh, we don't own anything anymore, remind people that whilst the badge on the front of a car that might be being driven might be owned by a company overseas, there are thousands of people across the UK that are involved in creating all these bits and pieces that help our cars go into the next generation. And this is also a really good time to crack out my favourite fact, which is that the classic car industry in the UK is actually worth more than the fishing industry. And Chris quite likes fishing, so it's a nice little fact that you can pull out in both areas. Now, Kev's been under that car and he's gone a bit quiet, so there's either 2 things that have happened here, which is that he's either almost finished the job or he's fallen asleep. So let's see what he's doing.
Oh, well, what a job. Anyway, I'm so glad I cut the slot, remember to cut the slot in these things, but what a blooming nightmare. Anyway, hopefully we'll never have to do that ever again, because I don't really want to do this again, to be honest. I'm getting a bit too old for this these days.
Well, I think we've heard all the swear words in the dictionary doing what appeared at first to be quite a simple job, but
yes.
just the placement of those bolts, really, isn't it?
Yes, because you're working sort of upside down, so that obviously the bolts drop down and whatever, and you've got to pull the cradle to one side to get it in, and you've got to lose. The secret is leave everything loose, and then eventually it goes back together again. But I don't particularly want to do that job again, to be honest.
No,
anyway.
And I think that's the magic of using decent parts, is that if you do use decent parts, you're not having to redo it all the time. I remember years ago there was a really bad batch of CV boots, and I seemed to be changing them every single year, and it was just horrendous. And then somebody said to me, why do you just keep buying the cheap ones? And I said, oh yeah, and it suddenly dropped for me. And I guess it really is a case of you buy cheap, you buy twice, but you also fit twice. And sometimes it's not about the cost, it's about the actual time that these things take. But at least it's one more job done. We're one step closer. What are we going to do next? So when we come back next time,
well, there's I really need
that door gap, haven't we?
I really need to concentrate on the bodywork. Which next week I've got a clear diary. So hopefully next week we can get all this door gap, as we explained before in the previous video, get those gaps straightened out.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the car and I think it looks like it's had a bump in that back corner. because it's the tailgate doesn't fit quite as well as what it should do. So there's
Right.
quite a bit of jiggling about to do next week, and then, well, then it is a case of a right good rub down preparation and paint, and then because most of the stuff is all reassembled, so we're not too bad really.
That's it from us today. I hope you've enjoyed learning something different. And remember, if you are working with somebody younger at home or somebody who's quite junior in their skill set, do as I say. Get them involved in the simple stuff, get them excited, and then it helps propel you forward for the more complicated bits and pieces. But from us today, I think we're off to the pub and
Yeah,
we'll
absolutely.
catch you later. So take care and drive safely.
Bye.